Ireland have finished their autumn international series with 3 wins out of 4 as they defeated Australia in Dublin. In this podcast, we'll be reviewing that game and asking what we've learned not just about Ireland, but about Test rugby as a whole. We'll also be previewing the first round of the European Cup, and we'll be getting to know my wonderful guest. This is the HG Rugby Podcast. My name is Hugh, and I am joined by rugby coach and analyst Brett Igoe. Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Hugh. Good to be on. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, delighted to have you on, and I can't wait to ask you lots of questions about really in-depth stuff coming up. But
Okay, cool.
we shall start the show. We jump straight into it, as always, with the big match, which was Ireland versus Australia. So this game was billed as a tactical battle between Schmidt and Farrell, a kind of preview for the Lions tour, a kind of clashing of the chess grandmasters, if you like. Is that what we saw?
Um, I think we did see it in Australia's defence. I'm not too sure we saw it in attack. Um, I think Ireland had majority of possession of the football. I thought Australia struggled to get out of their own 22. I thought their exit strategy was quite surprising because they gifted Ireland lineouts, which I thought was a very un-Joe Schmidt thing to do.
Oh.
Ireland launch most of their attacks through lineouts. They score most of their tries through lineouts. And their exit strategy was just to kick the ball into touch. And they didn't go very far. And they just gifted Ireland great field position and great setups to go. However, Ireland's lineout had a bit of a shake and a bit of a wobble. But so yeah, I was actually surprised that Joe Schmidt did this. Now, um, in terms of Ireland's attack, I thought Ireland went across the field quite a bit. I thought their starter plays were quite good. I thought we kind of opened them up and caused them a bit of problems, but I thought as the phases went into phase three, four, and five, I just think we got a bit lost.
That's what I've heard a couple of people say. I was watching the 8-9 Combo podcast previously, and just to your point about lineouts, 23 lineouts in one game of rugby
Yeah.
is quite remarkable. Over 20. You don't see that very often with an 87% win. And Ireland's lineout has looked shaky at times, you have to say, but well, 68% possession between the halfway and the 22 as well. That's quite a remarkable stat there. But um, I've heard other people mention about Ireland phrases, 3, 4, and 5 starting to look a bit lost, and that's kind of something that I've noticed as well. It seems like Australia knew what was coming. Is it due to the change in 10? Or are Ireland, the narrative about the autumn has all been about Ireland's evolution and where are Ireland going next in this World Cup cycle? Ireland looked to me like a team trying to figure out a new game plan. Is that fair? Am I accurate with that?
Um, I think they've brought in a new attack coach. So Mike Catt has left, and they've brought in Andrew Goodman, who's come from Leinster. From what I'm gathering is that he's in charge of the uh, starter attack, set piece attack, backs attack. And I think what we're seeing there is it seems to be a lot of time spent on it because there's some really,
Mm.
really intricate plays going on that as a coach myself, I know how long that takes on on a week to week basis. And those guys will only be probably doing 2 to 3 sessions a week. There's a lot of percentage of time in those sessions must be dedicated to those starter attacks. Are they, and again, I've no inside knowledge on this, is that now taking a big chunk of training? Are they moved away from the heavy games based approach that they would have had with Mike Catt, which probably would have come from the likes of Stewart? Andy Farrell is very knowledgeable on attack, and he drives that part of the game. I know Johnny Sexton was more or less a player coach.
Mm.
Again, Johnny's in and out of the camp as well, but he seems to be concentrating more on kicking and looking after the tens. So yeah, it looks like they're in a bit of transition, but I don't see too much different to what they've done before. It's the same shapes, it's the same people carrying, it's the same concept, but the backs have changed. I see Bundy Aki being a bit more of a distributor than he normally is. Um, they're kind of caught between. who that second playmaker is. Hansen kind of steps up to it. Lowe's working off his wing a bit more than they did in the past. But no, it's more or less the same, but the starter players are totally different.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I guess that does make sense of why the later phases maybe look a little bit more muddled if they're putting so much emphasis onto the starter players. Now, we'll look at an example of one of your analysis of a starter play a bit later in the podcast, but the kind of narrative that some people are saying after this game is that Schmidt knew the Ireland playbook. And do you still see Schmidt's fingerprints over this Ireland team? Do you still think they are his legacy in a way?
Well, it's interesting. We as an age grade coach in Leinster, we were invited up to a workshop with the senior coaching staff of Ireland. And it was run by Paul O'Connell and Simon Easterby and people like that. Andy Farrell was there too, but he kind of sat in the back of the room, uh,
Mm,
sort of vibe to him. And it was interesting the amount of references that Paul O'Connell would make towards Joe Schmidt was actually huge. Now, obviously, Joe would have been his coach at international level. And the terminology of around the breakdown is identical to what Schmidt would have done. Um, so his hands are still over Irish rugby around that part of the game, around that breakdown, around that post tackle effort. Though I see a bit of Jacques Niarber coming into what they're doing in defence,
mm.
especially around that breakdown. But yeah, no, look, Joe's legacy in Ireland is massive. Like you only have to look at uh, schoolboy coaches would be a classic one. He would have done a lot of sessions within schools. He would have invited a lot of coaches to his sessions to have a look at Joe's way of doing things, and I think that legacy is still there. No different to Stewart's. Stuart Lancaster was the same. We tend to in schoolboy land latch on to the next big thing. So I'd imagine most schoolboy teams will start moving to a hard up on the outside South African style defence in the next 12 months after
Wow, love
Jack
that.
has embedded himself in the province.
Yeah, I love that. So it's so fascinating hearing about that. Paul O'Connell still using Schmidt terminology and things. That's a perfect answer to my question of is Schmidt's legacy still on this island team? Do you think that advantaged Australia? Because, let's be honest, Australia's defense hasn't been their strong suit so far this season, and they have conceded an awful lot of points even in games that they've won. The England game being the perfect example of that. Does it worry you that Ireland weren't able to capitalize on that and they managed to they almost drew out of Australia their best defensive performance of the year so far?
Yeah, but it looks at things, Australia, they look like a team that spent the whole week in defence. So obviously after the Scotland game where they didn't defend too well, Schmidt has obviously looked at this and said, look, for me to be competitive when we get to Dublin, we need our defence more or less intact. They still conceded 3 tries. I
Mm,
thought how they defended the Caelan Doris try was awful. Um, like the dogs on the street know that peel play is coming because that's what Ireland have been doing all for the last number of years. Different variations of it. They bring Caelan Doris around on second phase, and it looked as though Australia were just not prepared for it, which is a very unlike Joe Schmidt thing to do. But um, I think they fanned out, they filled the field pretty well. I think most of Ireland's issues they had was actually their own doing. I'm not too sure whether it was Australia's defense. They had 21 handling errors. Um, like I went through the game last night, just clipping different parts of it. Like James Lowe, who's normally a really good performer for Ireland, ran into touch, dropped like sitters, just yeah, just very uncharacteristic errors, and it was disappointing to see, and if you give away those errors on third, fourth phase, Ireland can't actually get into their game, and you can't really test that Australian defense. But Australia did put them under pressure. They did make them make those mistakes. But I'd say Joe will be happy enough with where their defense is, but he has a lot of work to do if his next test match is actually a Lions test match.
so with that Peel play, is that the Doris try that you're referring to?
Yes.
Under the sticks. Okay, so I've brought that up here. Hopefully, we don't get anyone from TNT getting us
Oh,
in
great.
trouble for this one. But so so on this one, I've heard people refer talking about uh, the centre. I can't pronounce his name properly. The league guy.
Yeah.
Apologies, I can't say his name
Okay.
correctly. So is it Suaalii?
Sualihi, yeah.
Yeah. So what are you seeing from this? When you're saying they defended it poorly, what are you
Okay,
seeing? So
so if you watch outside of the referee on the right hand side is obviously their 10 and 12. So if you just play those through,
yeah.
okay, so we still have 10, 12. Now we have 12 and 13 now in the tackle area. So they've taken low out of it with the 12. So keep playing through. So Henshaw then goes. They're two centers, and you can see the 12 returning on the left hand side. So with the yellow boots.
Okay.
Their two centers have been taken out of this first play, which means they've got no midfield in defense. So if you just roll it back and just follow the 12, so the person who makes contact with James Lowe,
Yeah. So
we have it
he's so
there.
but he's there. So
So he
he's running there
returns.
with
So
the yellow
stop
boots.
there. Pause there. So at this moment in time, they're 10, 12, 13 are not on the line. They folded two forwards, one is a prop and one is an eight around the corner. So you can actually see the post there. Do a Guinness advertisement there. Guinness zero. There's actually no yellow jersey from probably 3 meters, 4 meters this side of the post. There's no one in the post, which is probably around 4 meters. Like that's 7 meters on your own goal line.
Yeah, so
No
they've
one's
got the
there.
next furthest in defender is the other side of the post there.
Yes. So, and which is actually their winger.
Wow. Okay. So how
Okay.
have they
So
gotten that
now
compressed that quickly? Is it just honeypotting? Is it just
it
panicking about the crash ball? What is it? Where does that come
well,
from?
I would have, if you're prepping for Ireland, you prep for that first phase, and you can see there's no real tail gunner around, so they haven't secured that area. Like there was actually a lot of areas you could have attacked them here. But the second phase from lineouts is Doris a majority of the time. He's a really good ball carrier, like he's one of the best ball carriers in the world. I just don't know why you'd actually give him that amount of space. Like you can see here, their number eight has he's defended up too narrow. Like they're all over the place. And that's a very un-Joe Schmidt like I wouldn't like to sit in their video review whenever that happens next. And
Yeah.
that's just a walkthrough. That's not like Kalen doesn't have to work hard for that try.
Yeah, absolutely not. That was brilliant. I'm going to definitely watch that back again in a bit. But so the again, if we talk about narratives for this game, we talk about the biggest one was about the fly half. So did you so with your association with Leinster schools, have you come across Sam Prendergast when he was
Yeah, I
coming
coached
through?
Sam for actually we were just talking about this the other day. Sam would have come into Leinster schools during the COVID pandemic. And oh, it was a real disjointed summer because we would train the Leinster schools would have a 10-week training camp in the summer. And Sam would have come through, he would have been spotted by Talent ID. He would have joined a squad of around 40 players. And it was government restrictions had begun to lift in Ireland. So we went and we said, right, we'll go with our summer program this year. And our program was shut down after 5 weeks. So we actually only coached, or sorry, I only coached Sam for 5 weeks. But I kind of knew after the first session, because I spoke to our head of player development straight after the session where he was at kind of at the end of the pitch and he wanted to know straight away what this kid was like because he'd heard so much about him. For me, it reminded me of Felipe Conteponi, where Felipe
Wow, okay.
has just so much time on the ball. He can do whatever he wants. As I said, he seems to have a pause button on the defense. Press pause. What will I do? And now I make that pass. And I still think Sam does that. I think he does check defenses pretty well. Yeah, the debate has been raging all week in Ireland. It became a very anti-Leinster debate. It became
It
a
there is
pro-Munster debate.
a provincial edge to it, let's be
It,
honest.
it definitely went on social media as that. If I was preparing for a Six Nations game tomorrow, I personally would have Crowley in for experience. I think Farrell gets a lot of criticism for keeping with his old guard all the time. And then when he changes to someone young, all hell breaks loose.
It was very rotate the players. No, not those
Yeah.
ones from
However,
one of
like,
the provinces.
look, Jack is an extremely talented player. We know that. His impact when he came on was excellent. Thought he did some really good
It
things.
was.
He had a bad one where he kicked out in the full, which he'd be frustrated with himself. But I thought those little probing kicks down the channels are really clever. I thought he looked like a man he was coming out to prove a point. And if that was Farrell's aim, it was achieved. He got that. Um, I'm not saying Sam didn't play well. Sam was excellent. His passing ranges were brilliant. I have a few issues around his defensive stuff. I didn't think it was that great. I thought at times some of the kicking became a bit aimless, especially in the second half. I think they went with an old-fashioned Gary Owens straight up the middle of the pitch at least 3 or 4 times. Yeah, they
They
overcrossed.
kicked too long a few times. There's a few
Yeah,
marks in this game.
yeah. There was a few that were kind of overcooked, but you'll actually notice two of them they'd no proper chasers ready. It just seems to be a bit off the cuffy for him. But
Hmm.
he's a kid earning his second or third cap. Um, he's only 21. He'll do a lot of learning from that from what's actually happened. Next question I have is does he own the 10 jersey in his provincial team, which will be very interesting to see how that materializes over the next 2 weeks with two European games coming up. But there was one thing I mentioned to a mate of mine yesterday. We have this big argument about the tens here, and we have a tradition of doing this for years and years. We had Raj versus Humphreys, Sexton versus Raj, and even if you go back, I actually saw one of the former tens. God, his name's gone. Tony Ward and whoever else it was back in the 70s. We had this battle 10 10 10, and we love it in this country. The media love this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
If Andy Farrell was to pick a lot three lines tens to tour and write down who they are right now, I'm not too sure those two tens would be in that.
Really? Really? That's
And if I go
interesting.
through, I think Farrell will pick Farrell from Racing. I think Schmit will go. And I think Russell will go from Scotland. So there's three tens. We haven't talked about the Northampton 10, who's very talented 10 as well. So, and then we're talking about going to the Irish tens. If I was to write down who the Lions team is, I'm picking two English tens and a Scottish 10 at this
Well,
moment.
does
Only
it
true experience, because that's
does
what you
it
need down there.
does it also come to who we weren't supposed to do Lions chat, but we're here now. Does it also come down to maybe who the 9 and the 12, 13 is as well? Because
Oh, it does.
if you're picking, because obviously the thing with the Lions is you've got no time to get cohesion, so you kind of have to buy in cohesion, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. So if they're if they're going to Pelotu and Hugh Jones, for example,
Yeah.
then to not pick Finn Russell would be daft, wouldn't it?
Oh, it would be daft. But that's why I said
Yeah.
he's a name on the team sheet, or he's a name on the plane ticket. I'm not committing to test lines. I'm committing to people who are on the package. I do think Farrell will pick Farrell, and I by the way, I don't think that's a form of nepotism. I think that's the correct decision. I'm a huge Farrell fan. I think he's a good player,
So
even
that
though
would be Owen Farrell's fourth Lions tour,
would it be his fourth?
because
Wow.
I'm pretty sure he was the youngest player on the 2013 tour.
Okay, yes, he would have been. Yeah, it would be his fourth Leinster. Wow,
So
it's pretty impressive.
of achievement.
Again,
Alan Wynne Jones will be
again,
hoping he
he's got
gets
to
some
get
shoes.
through. He's got to get through a season of top 14,
Yeah, my
which might
goodness.
be which is a bit different, you know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about some top 14
So we're
later.
having this internal debate on this island about two tens who are two talented, one's 24, one's 21, which is great. But on a world wilds level, they're not in that world class category, both of them, at this moment in time. I'm not saying they won't be in the next 2 to 3 years. Like I'd hopefully they'll get there by a World Cup and we'll have these two outstanding tens. I like the idea that they can both play, and depending on who you're playing, you bring one of them out. I like the impact both of them would have off the bench. And it's something we didn't have with Johnny Sexton. We didn't have like Johnny Sexton did the whole 80 minutes
Yeah.
in the World Cup quarter final against New Zealand with Jack Crowley on the bench, but Jack was 22, 23 at that stage with very little international experience. So having two international experience tens, whew, I'd be delighted with that because I'm
Yeah.
too sure too many others do.
Just makes you think about what South Africa have got at the moment, and then just absolutely terrifying. On Australia then, so the again talking about Joe Schmidt there. So I spoke to Brendan Shields from Rugbycology about what Schmidt is trying to do with Australia, and it felt like in the Rugby Championship he was doing, one of the words that I hear associated with Joe Schmidt a lot is control and controlling outcomes. So, for example, he's not a fan of offloads and things. And then coming into this autumn tour, we saw the offloads come, like Ikitau example and Suoli coming in and things. Where do you see what he's doing with them now? Are they adapting to become a Joe team, or do you see Joe sort of understanding that he needs to coach Australians more differently than how he coached Islanders?
It's a great question. I looked at them yesterday and there was a number of passages of plays they had. And I think it's from the first restart actually, where they played too many phases inside their own 22. And that would not be the Joe Schmidt way. So I don't know whether he hasn't had them long enough to be able to iron that out. However, he is probably what 4 games on this tour, six. He is probably 10 games in, roughly. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but
Yeah. So
I'm
12 or 13, I think.
yeah, would be. So I'm looking at this going, that's not the way Joe normally plays, And then when I was watching it originally, I thought, do you know what? Maybe he's denying them lineouts was the first one I thought of because I'm a bit of a rugby nerd, so I'm kind of looking at it in terms of strategy, what teams are doing and why they do these things. But I just thought that the opening exchanges was really, really strange. Then you spoke about, Brendan mentioned about control. Um, yes, he does. He does like those controllable moments without a doubt. But their exits were not controlled exits. They were
Hmm.
they didn't have a proper chase line. Sometimes they kicked long, sometimes they kicked out. The distance on the kicks, they didn't look set up to kick. And he looked a bit all over the place. However, their breakdown work was outstanding. And that's a real Joe Schmidt trait. He's very much into the ball carriers, what he would call feet fight finish. And this was something that's I actually see school kids now and coaches on the sidelines all talk about FFF, feet fight finish, and this is what Joe would do. So the ball carrier's got to use feet, fight through the contact, and finish, which is basically ball presentation. Then he'll have their two barrels, who are two clear outs, and you can see that all in place. And then he'd have his plugs set in, sometimes double barrels or left and right barrel. And I can actually see this happening. So I think that's an area that he was excellent at in Leinster and in Ireland. Um, I don't see. I didn't see it in attack. I didn't see. I didn't see. I didn't think their attack was that great. Really, I thought it was very
Well,
easy to
one
defend.
try, so
Yeah, and I thought he's probably relying on a bit of individual brilliance. But there's certain things like their restarts are excellent. Even throughout the tour, they were excellent. Restarts received are excellent. The setups are really, really good. So I see building blocks have been put in that weren't in under Eddie Jones. And it's quite clear he is putting his influence on this team. It's probably not happening as quickly as he wants it to happen, but he probably has his camps rearranged. It'll be interesting to see how the Super Rugby teams, whether they start adopting some of his ideas, because that's the way it worked in Ireland. People were looking
mm,
at what he was doing and breakdown, and the terminology all came, and all four provinces were doing the same thing. Like,
yeah, yeah, can't wait. That's absolutely going to be a narrative of next season. Super Rugby is going to be so fascinating next season. I
yeah,
can't wait to watch it.
yeah, it's gonna be
But
good.
anyway, if you are enjoying what you are either watching or listening to at the moment, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. A huge proportion of the people who watch the videos on this channel are not subscribed. So if you could subscribe, it really, really helps out. You can also get membership for 99 pence a month, which is the lowest. YouTube sets the cost as able to be, but it really helps cover the cost of making these podcasts. So massively appreciate it. Um, Next, then. So I want to talk about you. I want to talk about your career, what you do, where you're from. So, Brett Igoe, what is your job? So your Twitter bio says coach and analyst. For
Yeah.
whom and for where?
So I am originally a sports scientist. That's my undergrad degree. And I accidentally found myself involved in professional rugby. So I went to University in London and returned to Ireland because a family member was sick. And I accidentally got a job in Leinster Rugby, working in the coach education department. I lasted 1 week and I was working with the senior team. And I became the first professional full-time analyst in Ireland. So
Wow.
um, yeah, and only because the head coach at the time was Mike Ruddock, who's the former Welsh Grand Slam winning coach. I went into Mike's office for something one day. Mike is sitting at his desk, and I said, "Oh, I said, how much analysis do?" And I saw this analysis machine in the corner, and he said in his good old Welsh accent that it hadn't worked in years. And I said, "Oh," and he wanted to know could I get it up and running again? And I said, "Yeah." I said it's similar to what I did in my degree, and I became the team analyst the following day. So complete accident. So I stayed there for 5 years, and then I'm going to say stupidly. I always refer to it as stupidly, only because hindsight is a great thing. I ended up becoming the Scottish national team analyst, because our head coach, or sorry, our head coach in Leinster became the Scotland coach, and I was brought with him. We lasted 17 games. We won three. We got sacked all on the same day, which was a great it was a great experience. I really enjoyed my time in Scotland. I think there's some great people there. Um, it wasn't a very good team. They had they had maybe two or three really, really good players, but as a team as a whole, they weren't great. Unfortunately, the time we were there, England were World Cup champions. Wales had produced their first Grand Slam winning team for since the 70s. Ireland were winning triple crowns to beat the band, which they didn't win from the 80s. And France were France. Like France were winning, I think they won three Grand Slams in that area as well.
Yeah.
So we were at the receiving end where it was kind of like a bad era to jump into international rugby. So we were competing, and as I jokingly say, I like winning everything in sport. So it just happened to be a wooden spoon for those Six Nations I was involved. We were in competition with Italy into who could not win the wooden spoon, but we weren't nowhere near the standard of a Wales Grand Slam winning team, an Irish team with O'Driscoll and all those. But it was interesting because I was coming from Leinster where you were working with a backline of O'Driscoll and Horgan and Darcy, and then you were coming to a Scottish team where probably maybe one of their backs would have got anywhere near that team. So it was I don't mean this disrespectful, it was a downgrade, but it was international rugby. Um, Now I look at their backline now and you just go, oh my God, like it's just incredible what they have. They have they're they're certainly they've certainly evolved and moved on, which is that's what you want unions to do, and they've clearly done it. But yeah, it was an interesting time. It was an interesting time. So then I came back to Ireland and I'm working in coach education for Leinster Rugby. And I
Coach
coached
education. So you,
the
yeah, go on.
schools
Sorry,
team.
Karen.
Sorry,
The
I
schools
coached the
team.
schools team for a number of years, of which I've just finished up. So I've done my stint, and it's time for someone else to take it on now.
So this is a question I ask anybody who's either a fan of Leinster or affiliated with Leinster in any way. What position is Jordie Barrett going to play?
He's going to play in the wing.
You say that with a lot of certainty.
Well, I was thinking about this last night, and I was texting a few mates of mine who are also heavily involved, and we can't see him. We can't see him playing obviously 10 because
Hmm.
otherwise then Leo now has 5 10s that he's going to have to pick, and Leo wants to sleep at night, so he already has his sleepless nights with 4 10s. I think it's going to be Henshaw Ringrose in the centre. I think Lowe will be on one wing, Keenan will be on the other wing, and then there's a wing spot up for grabs, and that's where I think he'll go. That's what
Wow.
I think.
Can I tell you my left wing conspiracy about
Okay,
it?
go on.
I think left field conspiracy, I should say. I think he's going to be where a 20. I think he's going to be in the team in whatever capacity, and I think they're going to go for a 7-1 split because he can cover the whole backline. So I think Leinster are going to go 7-1 at some point in this towards the end of this season, maybe in who knows in a Champions Cup final or something. That's my bold
Wow.
prediction for rugby in 2025.
Wow. 7-1 split. Wow. Yeah. Look, they could. Like he can, as we know, he can cover anywhere across the back line. I do think if I'm really honest, I think he'll start on the bench this weekend. I'm not sure Leo will jump him straight in straight away.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree.
knowing how conservative Leo can be on the selection fronts. I think Jimmy O'Ryan will play on the wing, would be my guess. There will be a few sore bodies from 6 weeks in camp with Ireland, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But yeah, look, what a player to have for 6 months. It is the envy of the world, really, of club rugby in the Northern Hemisphere, really.
Yeah, absolutely. So coming back to yourself then, so
Yeah.
with all your experience of being a rugby coach and being a professional analyst and doing what you do on social media, so when you're watching a game, and we kind of touched on this earlier, what are you watching? I'm assuming you watch it differently to how a casual fan would watch it.
My
What are you
mates,
paying attention to?
my mates hate watching the game with me. They absolutely hate it because if we go to a pub and there's a game on in the background, I watch the game trying to work out the strategies that are actually involved in the game, whereas they watch it as an entertainment factor. So they actually hate watching it. My wife hates watching the game with me. It's like, what's he doing there? Why is he doing that? I'm always trying to problem solve why teams are doing this and why they're doing that. Yeah, as an analyst, you're looking at it. I look at it in terms of what we call principles of play. So number one principle is winning possession. So the first thing I look at is how do teams win possession. So there's a whole host of different ways, whether it be scrum, line out, restarts, balls kicked to you, turnovers. So that's the main one I look at. I am fascinated by team attacks and team defenses and how they evolve and how they all work together, how you attack with 15 players. So you'll see an awful lot of my social media stuff is a lot of shape attack, understanding people going through 1-3-3-1s or whatever the fancy terminology is now. Um, yeah, I quite enjoy doing that. I quite enjoy working out why teams do that. So this is one, yeah, this is one from the from the Argentinian game. If you it's interesting. I'm doing a presentation tomorrow for coaches how to use strategy, which is similar to what we're talking about here. And I found the clips of Argentina in the championship
Hmm.
being defending like that. So Ireland have obviously done a hell of a lot of organization. So you can see their tail gun. If you go back to the start of that clip, so
Yeah.
you'll see there number 16 has decided he's going to go and defend them all. So when he comes in and defends them all, he leaves a 10-meter channel. So the battle is the 20 meters between Ireland's 10 and the Argentinian 10. So if they can fill that vacuum as quickly as possible, they're now on the front foot. And in a green zone lineout, you need to be on the front foot after the first phase. So you can be on the front foot off a maul, or you can play these sort of plays that Ireland loves so much. So when he joins that, so if you just roll it on slightly, there, now you see they have a complete channel to go after the 10 and 12.
Hmm.
The other thing you've got to work out is Ireland have done probably a huge amount of homework into the tackle techniques of each of those individual players that they're up against. So they will know whether they're impact
It
tackle.
really goes into that detail of does he tackle high? Does he go for the legs?
Yes.
That kind of thing.
Yeah, so they would actually have all that information for each one of those, high, low, impact, soak, and their favorite techniques. And at the moment, they're poor. They're two poor defenders, so they just have to get in the front foot here, and they're going to cause problems. However, where that jam happens of that 16 jamming in, you'll notice that the guy from the second from the front of the line out or third from the front of the line out comes all the way around. And that now it becomes a 2-on-1 channel attack. So if you play it on again, there. So you can see the spacing inside for low.
Hmm.
So lows are sitting at 11. So Henshaw's just going to fish that guy, that what I call lazy tail gunner coming through, and they're going to hit the gap inside because there's a separation between the line out maul and the extra forward coming across.
So has the plan changed here, do you think? Do you think
No, I
that
don't. I don't think it has. There is a line out just before that happened where they've done the same thing, and I would imagine the coaching back saw it and radioed down and said, "This is also on." So you're just giving your players a menu for them to attack. But that's really smart analysis, whoever designed it, whether it be Farrell, O'Connell, Goodman. But you can see it's an easy channel to go. Low is so hard, or who's it low? Yeah, he's so hard to
yeah,
stop there.
yeah. He's
Then what you
such
got
an
to look
unusual
at,
winger.
oh, he is, yeah. The other part, which isn't on that clip, they'll have worked out that if they do attack just off that line out, they'll have worked out how many people will fold, how many people will hold, and they'll know each individual defender all the way across on that second phase who to go after. So you'll see there, I think it's Joe McCarthy comes back on a double runner and he just goes straight through. That's because there's an overfold there. Argentina are panicking. They're on the back foot. That's a really, really well thought out try by Ireland.
Yeah, fascinating. Love it. So this is making me quite think then. So you're a lecturer
Yeah.
on doing these kind of things. So one of the big conversations in rugby is um, explaining the game because it can be a complicated game at times, and getting it explained on TV. And sometimes some of the more hardcore fans get frustrated with the punditry or the way it's presented on TV. Of some pundits seem to mockingly go like, "Oh, I don't know what's going on there," or some pundits seem to hold back. You often get when players are freshly retired, often make the best pundits because they go into a lot more detail. What's your advice to someone who's trying to explain a game of rugby to someone who's new to the game?
I actually think what rugby's really missing is Monday night football. So Monday
Yes.
Night Football, for those who don't know, Premiership football in the UK is a program on Monday. It's a live game, and they spend the first hour. It comes on at 7 o'clock. The game's on at 8 o'clock, and they bring in 2 to 3 former pros. It's normally Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher or someone like that, and they go through in unbelievable detail the tactics that they would have saw either the week before or during or the Saturday afternoon, the previous Saturday. And I think that's educated the general public, the armchair fan, the keyboard warrior, whatever we're going to
I,
call it.
I I would say that I think as a very, very generalistic comment, I think that a football fan knows more about football than a rugby fan knows about rugby at the moment.
Yes, and I think it's down to programs like this. Now, the argument is not everyone has Sky, and how would they all see that? But I think the level of tactical analysis that's actually going on in football is brilliant, and I love the way it's being presented most of the time, and I love the job that the likes of Sky Sports do on this. I think we badly, badly need this in rugby. We have a TV station here, Virgin Media, and they've started to do small little slots, but it's still not enough. Um, there's so much detail around our game that the general public don't actually see and don't understand. And it is difficult. It is difficult to explain it, which is partly the reason why I probably started the social media site. I just find little things, and all it is it's an education. It's to improve the knowledge of the general public that are actually out there that might not have seen what I've seen or what an analyst will see or what a coaching group would see. And I think it's important, but I do it as a hobby, no different to you. I love
Hmm.
sport, you love the sport too. And that's why I do it. I don't do it through any financial gains or anything like that. And I just love sharing that information to people. And I do think it's the role and responsibility of unions and and their coach education departments to educate the public on our game.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really hope that the people who watch what we've been going through are really taking a lot of value from it because I'm loving it.
Yeah.
Um, Slight change of topic now. So something that you wrote about that I found really interesting. It's a topic that I'd tried to write about a little bit previously and found it a very, very nuanced topic. Is, and this is a complete topic change, is artificial rugby pitches.
Oh yes. Yeah.
So it's a very, very emotive topic. There's obviously a lot of people. Everyone seems to know a horror story of someone who got badly injured on an artificial pitch. There is players who have very openly called for them to be banned, and yet they are becoming more and more prevalent. So they're getting more and more widely used. So I guess as an intro to the discussion, then, when you were researching and when you looked into it, what were the kind of things that you noticed and kind of what's the science behind artificial pitches?
Yeah. So I suppose my background in looking into it is rugby in Leinster schoolboy land was traditionally we played in Donnybrook in Dublin, which was a grass pitch. We played our schools cup games in January, February, March, where it was just awful. Like you were basically playing on a beach because it was just people just lumping sand onto it. And Leinster decided to rip up that pitch and put in an artificial pitch. I was coaching in a school for 10 years that had an artificial pitch, which was first artificial pitch there was rugby
So is
pitch in
that
Ireland.
3G?
That was 3G, yeah. So we put one in, or sorry, Clongowes Wood College put one in. Oh God, I'm trying to think, 2000, 2001. So they've had one a long, long time. And the Irish national team actually used this for training during terrible weather. Um, it was weather related. It was overuse. Like the pitch in Donnybrook, there's two clubs. There's one club on the end, Old Wesley Rugby Club, and Bective Rangers on the other end, and they've got four, five, six, seven teams that play on the weekends. They play during the week. Leinster were playing Heineken Cup games there at times. Leinster's age grade program would operate out of there as well, and it was just madness. They couldn't keep the pitches, so they moved to AstroTurf because they wanted durability around the pitches, and the logic was there. So when that happened, a majority of the schools teams that would play in the Leinster Schools Cup competitions jumped on it too, because if the game's are going to be played on Astro, sure, we may as well put one in. So we've had this massive explosion of AstroTurf pitches within schools in Ireland. And then to add to the layers of it, the government start giving out government grants, Sports Ireland grants to put in floodlights on pitches and to put in AstroTurf pitches. So now in clubland, it's actually exploded again. So if you go to really far-reaching regional clubs like Longford, Mullingar, Tullow, which is down in Carlow, um, there is state-of-the-art AstroTurf pitches, and they're brilliant because they don't have the money for the maintenance of grass because it's really difficult. We live in an island in the Atlantic Ocean, which has Atlantic storms every few weeks or every few days, and the weather here in Ireland is desperate during the winter. So the logic thing was to put in these pitches, but I'm not too sure whether there's too much thought went into it, because
Mm.
I know the Dutch government now have put in place an exit policy for ripping out their AstroTurf pitches by 2030. They have research around its carcinogenic effects of it,
Yeah, with the pellets, right?
which is the rubber pellets that go in. Now, I know I know they've changed the surfaces in places like Italy and in France where the rubber pellets aren't actually used. There's a different, more organic fill being used at the moment. That might be the answer. Okay, so there's also research from Stirling University in Scotland, more or less saying the same thing. We have research in America around baseball teams, and it's coming back the same thing, which is
Yeah.
a red flag, which is a red flag for governments who are giving government grants. It's a red flag for clubs and schools who are insisting that we're going down this AstroTurf route. I would imagine the solution will be to change the infill of it. However, World Rugby, their guidelines around AstroTurf pitches are quite strict of what you can and can't use as a fill. So they're pretty confident that they've got a pretty robust system in place, which they do. So like it's not alarm bells at the moment. However, I'm also looking at injury rates, whether the game is faster. Yes, the game is faster. I think by asking players what they think of it, I'm not too sure players really like playing on it.
Mm.
The professional players totally don't, but you got to remember the professional players play on really well manicured pitches
Yeah, the best pitches in the
and the
world.
best pitches around. Whereas, speaking for someone who's coached in Donnybrook when it was an old grass pitch, it was absolutely desperate. So if you ask me which way I prefer right now, I'd pick the AstroTurf pitch. But if you ask me which I prefer between the RDS surface and the Uviva surface, compared to the AstroTurf, I'd pick the Aviva and I pick that grass. But again, they have the top groundsmen working in it. There's a school down in Cork, CBC Cork, and they have a grass pitch. It is the best grass pitch, rugby pitch I have ever seen, and I include any of the international grounds I've been in. It's absolutely sensational pitch, but they have a full-time groundsman who it's like his child. He looks after it that well, and it's a phenomenal pitch to play on. So if you have a choice between playing in Musgrave Park, which is where Munster play in Cork, which is an AstroTurf pitch, or that grass pitch at the back of the Army Barracks, you'd pick the grass pitch every time. But not everyone is at that luxury. Clubs and schools don't have that luxury.
Mm. Do they cause injuries?
Um, yeah, look, you've read the research too. There's research that there's an increase in lower limb issues, ankle injuries, knee injuries. There is research that say about for women's rugby, there's an increase in ACL injuries around women's sport. But I think there is also ones around grass, the exact same that's coming through. Women are more susceptible to ACL injuries anyway, um, because of the nature of the way they're made up. And yes, it does. It does. The current research is yes, it does cause a higher increase of injuries. But there is one or two little counter arguments beginning to come back and say, no, it doesn't. It doesn't. I don't know whether that's a bit of a protection of the idea of AstroTurf pitches, but it definitely does.
Yeah,
Be interested to
I
do a survey of the physios working in these clubs and that do remember it as a grass pitch, what their injury rates are like now.
mm,
We
yeah,
definitely we definitely had a huge, sorry, not a huge. We had we trained on AstroTurf this year in our summer program. We definitely had an increase in injuries.
fascinating. That is very, very interesting to note. Yeah, it's difficult as well because there was a study that came out about knee injuries in the English Premiership, and it showed that they were going up. But they in that, and that did make reference to artificial pitches. But in that time, obviously, there's only four artificial pitches in the now 10 teams in the Premiership, and they weren't there over the entire time of the study. So it kind of rugby is getting there are more injuries in rugby anyway.
Yes,
So to try and correlate that with and without the artificial pitches is it's a real challenging thing. So it's and obviously you mentioned the fact that women are more susceptible to ACLs and things. Of course, if there's a perception that artificial pitches cause that or contribute to that more, women's teams are more likely to play on artificial pitches because they're playing relatively lower down size venues and things that are more likely to have them. So it's obviously a huge topic. And as you said, there are players who've come out and said, no, we hate them. The one injury that we know that you get on artificial pitch that you don't get on a real pitch is abrasions and burns and your skin coming off and things. But I've also read that it's down to how well it's maintained, how well it's looked after, how it's watered, and how the fill is packed in and things. So it is an interesting one, and like I said, it's very emotive. It's very emotive indeed.
definitely.
So before we move on to the next part of the show, just a reminder to everybody that if you are enjoying it, but this is a bit too long of a YouTube video for you to watch on YouTube, there are audio formats available, whether it be Spotify or podcast. You can find links down to both below. And if you could give a 5-star rating to those and share them with a friend, it really helps the show grow. So massive thanks for that in advance. Okay, into the last section of the show then, Brett. So talking about what's coming up next week, which is the European Cup, which is a lot of rugby fans' favourite competition in rugby. So this is a crowbar segue into the thing that we really want to talk about, which is the top 14. So you're a big French rugby fan. I've seen you
I am,
tweet
yeah.
about it a fair bit. What do you love about French rugby and the top 14, and who are your favourite teams
Oh,
to watch at the moment?
oh Lord, what like I just love everything about the French league. I was lucky enough to go down and spend time with Guy Noves in France when he was Toulouse head coach. He was the Alex Ferguson of French rugby. And I kind of fell in love with there and then. So I was on this kind of road trip to try and pick up ideas from different clubs. And I kind of like jumping in to try and get some ideas, how people do their business. And I spent a week down there with him, which was which is just mind blowing. And from then, I've basically loved French rugby. So when I was analyst to Leinster, when anytime they wanted to do a scout of the opposition, if it was in France, I was the first hands up to go. So I would spend a lot of time. I had a great month in France no, this year, where I went around numerous top 14 teams and spent time within them, looking at them, preparing for their semi-finals. And yeah, it was just fascinating to see how they do it. What I love about it is just the culture of the people, the community. Like I went to the semi-final at top 14 in Bordeaux and parked up the car. Everything was fine, and I just saw buses of fans arriving, barbecues came out, beers, and it wasn't separated. It was just everyone just pitched in, and it was Toulouse and La Rochelle, and both sets of fans are equally as happy to sit beside each other all the way through. Songs, music, atmosphere. Like there's so much they do so much better than club rugby in England and in Ireland. Um, different, it's like small little things like on the big screen. Now I know most clubs don't have a big screen. Every time there was a penalty, they actually explained in a kind of a cartoony form of what the penalty was for. So if you're a neutral fan and you're sitting there, and we've spoken about trying to make rugby more understandable to the normal punter that goes. All of a sudden, if there's a penalty, you go, "What's that for?" And you look up on the big screen, and they're actually explaining it to you. You're going, "Oh yeah, okay, that was for that. That was for that." I just think, like, how simple is that? How simple is that to understand? Yeah, like there's so much I love about it. The style in which they play. I love the part that they all have their own embedded historical culture of how they play the game. And then obviously they have global stars playing the game that's
Mm.
embedded in their teams. And it's just fascinating to watch. I just love it. I love watching the top 14 for 25 years now at this stage.
Yeah, and like you say, the culture of the fans is so different. Not only the attendances being so much higher than what we see anywhere else in the world. Like, for example, I think La Rochelle have sold out something like 98 home games in a row. Bordeaux have got 6 sellouts in a row, and they've got a 30 plus thousand capacity, which is just not something that we see anywhere else in the world. Um, we're looking ahead to Europe then. Which French teams do you think will be the contenders? Obviously, we know Toulouse will be there with their unbelievable roster of players. Are we going to see Bordeaux challenge a bit more? Are La Rochelle going to be back to where they were a couple of years ago?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually I have a few friends coaching those two particular teams, sorry, all three particular teams in different guises. So I have to be careful what I say because they are mates. Yeah, I think I think what Bordeaux are building is pretty impressive. I think it's they play a wonderful brand of rugby. I think they have backline to die for, and I think Noel Mack has got the best out of a world-class backline. The lingering doubt I have with them is their front five. Um, I think they definitely have people that can go a half, but I'm not too sure they have too much off the bench. I don't think they have the impact in the front five off the bench. And I think that's where they'll ultimately struggle. I think they'll struggle against Toulouse when if that happens, especially they struggle in the top 14 with them. And I think that will come true into Europe. I think they'll struggle against teams like Leinster in that front five. However, if you play loose against this team, you are on a huge receiving end of an almighty hammering, because they have class all over that back line and all over the back row. Their back row are pretty impressive too. But yeah, that's my lingering doubt I would have over Bordeaux. But they're doing some great things, and they will solve that problem eventually. But I'm not too sure it's been solved just yet. If you go back to the top 14 final, you can actually see it, where they've actually fallen short. La Rochelle, I think there's probably a bit of a rebuild. I actually I just received a text from someone in La Rochelle who said, "Did you see our result yesterday?"
Yeah,
Which,
they
annoying.
lost at home to Von.
Yeah, I have to say I haven't seen the game.
Me neither.
I'm still actually in shock that I've seen.
Yeah. Matt, so for people who don't know, Von were promoted from the Pro D2 last year. They're the first Brittany team in France to reach the top 14, and they've been looking like they're going back down, to be
And
honest,
by the
which is
way,
a shame.
if anyone is in that part of the world, I strongly recommend you go and watch a game there. It is the most beautiful town in France that you will ever see. It is absolutely incredible place to watch a game of rugby.
Yeah. So no doubts that Raj will be turning a bright shade of red to match. I won't say
Yeah,
what to
I
match,
have to say
but
I don't really know what happened there, but that's probably one of the biggest shocks in top 14 in a long, long time.
mm,
And then I actually just saw Bordeaux only won 9-6 as well, which I would have thought they would have put Montpellier to the sword, and it was a pretty strong Bordeaux team that they put out as well.
yeah, yeah. You do get that in the top 14. You get some surprisingly low score lines sometimes.
Yeah,
It's not some people
yeah,
sometimes think that it's super rugby, but in French. It's not really. It's really quite different.
yeah.
So it's difficult, isn't it? Because the two teams that we see the most of from the top 14 are Toulouse and Bordeaux at the moment, apart from La Rochelle. But they're quite atypical of the top 14, aren't they? The top 14 rugby is quite forward orientated and quite, I don't know, what's the word that you'd use? I was going to use a word that's a bit derogatory, but it's not free flowing, is it?
No, look, you can have it. Look, it depends who you are. Like if you're watching Perpignan versus, I don't want to be horrible to it, but I actually think, um, say, Bayonne is probably one that kind of springs to mind. It is pretty much an arm wrestle you're watching, and you're not going to watch it if you're into your scrums and your mauls and the the tactical nouses around those areas of the pitch, you're going to get it in buckets in those games. If you're into free flowing French backline play, you're not going to get it in those games. It's just not going to happen. However, there are times in the season where they'll actually need that, and that's why some of those teams are actually quite successful. Um, they they have an ability to just to play to the strengths of their team, and that's what they do. And but to be honest, that's their culture. They've probably been doing that since the 80s.
Yeah.
They'll bring in players to match that culture of that team. They'll bring in coaches that will match that. And if you bring in someone that doesn't match that, they don't last too long. They move them on very, very quickly.
Mm, mm.
But
So
it's fascinating to watch, yeah.
yeah, so moving kind of elsewhere in Europe to England then. So obviously you and I being URC fans, we know
Yeah.
the URC teams, the vast majority of people watching this will be URC fans. So looking at England then, kind of the big club that everyone's talking about at the moment is Bristol. Now, I don't know how much you've watched of them. Obviously, there's a lot of rugby that needs to be watched, but
Yeah.
playing, Pat Lam has very much doubled down on attack, 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 and when in doubt, attack some more. And the stats that came out of the Harlequins game were quite funny, really, in just terms of how defense was just not on the agenda. So, how do you think that they could translate into European competition, playing against these hyper organized, hyper quality URC sides that are 80% test teams or French teams that have got world stars throughout them?
Oh, I actually did watch. I watched Bristol and the Harlequins the other night. I've been told many a times that Bristol are a great attacking team, and they are. It's actually really nice to watch. Some of their attack is absolutely sensational. They have a rake of really good individuals, but defense is optional. It is very optional. Um, I look, how will they do? I think against the really really big teams, I don't think that they'll come near it. I think they're players who want to attack like that when they don't have that room and they don't have that freedom to play that a Toulouse defense will do to them, or a Leinster defense will try and suffocate them. I think their players might get a bit bored, and I think they'll be looking for their plan B pretty quickly. Um, it's not to say they won't. I actually think Bristol will cause Leinster a lot of problems, but I think if they go side to side all the time, I think the Leinster defense will eat them. And I think they could struggle through it. But if it's a broken up game, a free flowing game, they have the players that would cause damage. They definitely do. I love the way they're attacking. I think it's brilliant to watch. But there's other parts of their game they'll fall down badly. They will fall down badly.
I think there was a stat last year that they won a game of rugby with 4 kicks in the whole game. They kicked the ball 4 times, which just goes to show uh, how unusual their approach is. Who else from England is maybe catching your
Yeah,
eye?
look, I like Northampton. I think the guys in Northampton have done a great job with them. I was actually really impressed with them. They came and played in Croke Park, there for the semi-finals of Europe. And yeah, they're not full of Galactico stars. They don't have a whole heap, but they have some really good emerging stars, which is great to see. But I just love the way they're going about their business. I think they're definitely one. I think the English Premiership is just suffering that they don't have those global stars anymore, because I think they kind of all just go off to France. Like by right, historically, Leinster would never have got a Snyman or a Jordie Barrett. They would have gone and played in England. You know, the bright lights of London would have been something that they would want. I also think some of the teams be a bit of an aging way about them, about
Hmm.
their style of play. I don't think they've evolved as much as they probably should have. Saying that, there's some pretty good young kids beginning to come, but that's going to take time before that filters through, you know.
Yeah. So what trends do you think we'll see in Europe? So assuming that it's all the best team, well, most of the best teams are in it. The English get 8 in, so maybe some not so good teams are in it. But the the best players are in it. We'll see full strength teams. What trends from the Autumn Nation series in terms of how rugby is played, maybe attacks or tactics and things, might we start to see in the top level of European rugby, do you think?
Yeah, it was interesting that I actually didn't know they were doing this, and I know it's not a new law, but the escort lines on the box kicks, which would kind of took place in though I did see some wild ones yesterday that weren't pulled up by the
Hmm.
referee. This referee, the Italian referee, didn't really focus on it too much. But I watched the URC on Friday and Saturday, and I all I heard was access and you must allow this to happen. I thought, oh, they're obviously going to concentrate it on this level as well. So it's going to come into Europe, I would imagine. So I think it'll be interesting to see how teams deal with that traditional box kick, whether they go back to 10 and feed off him. I think the quality of your nine becomes really interesting, which I thought this was a bit strange by England, how they would get someone that likes the box kick with protection, and when he doesn't have protection, he's actually a pretty bad box kicker, and they continue to select that. I think teams now will start selecting players around their strength on their kicking game, especially if you do kick through that. However, that new focus or law focus won't affect a team like Toulouse because Dupont can actually kick with no he doesn't need that access because he's so good. He doesn't need that protection on his kicks. Plus he can kick off both feet, which is even better for him. But teams like Leinster will be repositioning the likes of Snyman into position because he's big long levers, he's big athletic guy.
We're seeing a lot more charge downs these days, it feels
Yeah.
like already.
So I think that is something that will happen. There's a few little things around the line out beginning to come back, which had disappeared. I think the lineouts over the 15, I think, has become. I know the French scored some great tries against England in the last 3 or 4 years from it, but I think that's now entered European rugby level. I see it in the top 14 quite a bit where they're bypassing the line out itself and hitting either one of the backs. I saw Ireland come up with a really nice one where Joe McCarthy's in the line out and he goes back around the tail of the line out beyond the 15 and they launched a play off him. I think pods going beyond the 15 and jumping. I've seen this now begin to happen. So this will filter in the international game. So it will filter into the club European game. So that's one for me that is interesting to watch out for. I think starter plays has become a bit popular again. So I think for years we went through this whole idea that we just played phase play, especially in Ireland, where we just wanted to get into our 1-3-2-2 and all these numbers that people shout out nowadays.
Hmm.
But I think teams are now beginning to have a go off set piece, especially off scrum time and off line out attack. And I've seen some really good innovation going on there. That it's not just I'm just going to truck the 12 up the middle of the pitch and we'll set up and we'll play off that. But we're now beginning to see this, and that was something that was in our game for years, but it was eroded and disappeared. I actually put it down to a lack of attack coaches, but I think it's definitely come back. I think attack coaches now see this as an opportunity where there's 16 players now in a bound mass on one part of the field, and we can try and isolate someone else. So I think that's an interesting one. Oh, the plus lineouts is another interesting one. There's a lot of the plus man in the lineout coming in and lifting,
Hmm.
which again was a big feature of the autumn internationals. Again, it just gives I think Scotland had some really, really smart lineouts this year. Um, it's unusual I play a compliment to Scotland, so I thought I'd add that in. Um, yeah, I thought they had some really smart lineouts on their pluses. So yeah, so these are all just small little things that I've noticed. I think I think the referees have got a bit more smarter around the breakdown. I think the refereeing of the breakdown has improved, but I think what the improvement is they see the legalities and the bending of the rules and the law, or sorry, the laws a lot clearer than they used to. So I see the breakdown. There's some really wild stuff going on at the moment, and I think the really good referees are now just going, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. This is things like the lazy roller to someone who makes a tackle and just stays there and then flaps their arms up in the air. People now the referees now know that that's a coach tactic to slow it down the scrum half. Whereas 12 months ago, they just thought, he's making an attempt to roll away. So I think their knowledge has actually improved quite a bit.
Hmm.
So these are all just small little things that I think we'll see over the next while.
Everybody listening to that last bit about the breakdown will be thinking Leinster, but
Well, it's not so much Leicester are one of them. I actually thought yesterday, or sorry, Saturday's game. I I don't like having a go on referees. I definitely don't. But I just thought both sides. It was absolutely wild. What was some of the stuff that you were seeing? And I went over the game again last night, and I was just clicking some of the stuff, going, "How does he not spot that? How is that not possible?" And it's so difficult for him. There's so much going on, and if you have two people coming into your breakdown that are doing wild things, it's just an information overload on that. And you saw it with the referee in the Fijian game. There was moments where the referee put their hands up that there was going to be a penalty, But then another penalty came straight away, and it was just like, oh, there's two going on now at once. And trying to process her mind, trying to process that information was really, really difficult. And I think all of them are the same. I think the referee in the Australian England game really struggled with this too. And it's difficult. It is so difficult. I actually sway all the time between should we have two referees on the field. I keep changing my idea.
Wow. Okay. I think that's a debate for another time, I think. But just quickly, if people do want to hear more about the top 14, there is a new show on the audio format only. Link will be in the description down below, which is a top 14 digest, specific top 14 show. It's only half an hour long, so it's your weekly fix of French rugby. Keep up to date with who's doing well, who's had a shocker. There's a few funny bits in there as well. Some French words that are amusing in English, shall we say. That's a bit of a clue. But
Yes,
unfortunately,
I
Brett.
did. I did listen to it just Friday. I listened to it. I thought it was very good. Yeah, there was an interesting word being used. All right.
Blame my co-host Maz. It's nothing to do with me. But thank you so much for listening. Yeah, unfortunately, Brett, we've come to the end of our chat today.
Great.
I've got plenty of questions in my head that I want to ask you, but it's been a fantastic chat. Thank you so much
Oh,
for going on.
thanks for having me. No, I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I remind us everyone, like, subscribe, share links. If you did enjoy this and you felt it was valuable, please let other people know. If you want to follow Brett on socials, it's Brett Rug Analyst.
Yes,
At Brett Rug Analyst on Twitter and on Blue Sky as well.
and Blue Sky. Yep, we've all moved to Blue Sky.
Yeah, rugby Twitter is now Rugby Blue Sky. I feel like
Yes, I'm
the
afraid
likes and
so. Yeah.
shares and things are much more. So anyway, so just thanks very much, Brett. Thank you to everybody for listening and enjoy your rugby. I hope everyone's team wins, and we shall speak to you next time. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.